What's up, everybody? We're back. Corey Hughes Bloody History. So yesterday I put out a new video on David Ferrie and the Knoll and the Winterland. So that's up on Rumble. The link will be in the description here. Definitely go check that out. Today we're going to pick back up with the testimony of Marguerite Oswald before the Warren Commission. And we started this the other day, and I am going to pick up right from where we left off. So at the moment, Marguerite is being questioned about Lee's jobs and when he moved from Fort Worth to Dallas to start at Jagger Charles Stovall. And let me see, we'll pick up right here. Now, this Sunday, October 12th, this is very important, gentlemen, I went to this home and I was there. I asked to get off an hour or two to see the children from this OB case at the Rosenthals. Remember, I'm still looking to find out when Marguerite Oswald went to nursing school, because it doesn't seem to exist anywhere. If anybody knows that, please drop me a line. I went to see my son and daughter-in-law, and they were nicely dressed. And while there, about 10 minutes, a young couple came in the home, approximately the same age as Marina and Lee, and they had a little boy who I would say is about 6 or 8 months older than June. The woman put the little boy in the playpen with June, and June went to touch him. And Marina got up and said, "Oh no, hurt baby." She spoke in English. So I said, "Do you speak Russian?" to this couple. And they said, "No, we don't. We're Americans. But my father," and I will have to say this, or grandfather, I do not know which, is a Russian from Siberia. And that is how we know Marina and Lee. That's an interesting connection there we need to figure out. So the conversation was general, and in general conversation now, this couple was from Dallas visiting my family in Fort Worth. The conversation was general. And she said, "Lee, my father has this place of business in Dallas and will offer you a job in Dallas." Lee said, "I didn't know that you wanted to give up your..." And I said, "Lee, I didn't know you wanted to give up your job and work in Dallas because the Rosenthals that I'm working for, her father owns the meatpacking house in Dallas. And she has told me that he employs hundreds of people, and if ever at any time you're in need, to go see her father, and she would be sure that he would give you a job." So, gentlemen, this was on a Sunday. I made coffee, and the house was in order. There was nothing packed. Lee got paid on Friday from Leslie Sheet Metal Works. Monday, Lee and Marina packed their belongings and went to Dallas. The point I'm bringing is that Lee had no idea of quitting his job in Fort Worth because he was not packed. This was on a Sunday. And this couple offered a job in Dallas, and their father, her grandfather, was a Russian, and Lee went to Dallas on a Monday and worked for the Arts Graphic. I do not know, but you probably have that information, his very first job there. Mr. Rankin then says, "Do you know whether he was discharged by the Leslie people?" "No, sir, he was not discharged by the Leslie people. He just didn't show up. He was paid on a Friday, and that Monday he did not show up for work because he came to Dallas." The point I'm bringing out is this job was also offered to Lee from a Russian father. He had no idea of moving. There was nothing packed. Now, I understand that my son Robert helped him move. And the way I know this, I went there on a Tuesday, and the children had gone because they had left on a Monday. So then I went to Robert's home, and Robert was at work. So I was all upset. They didn't tell me they were leaving. I said to Veta, "Marina and Lee are no longer there. The house is vacant." Mr. Rankin says, "You spoke someone's name." "Veta, Veda. Robert's wife is Veta." I said they had to move yesterday. She said Robert helped them move, and they gave us the food in the refrigerator. I said it came up all of a sudden, and I told the story about the couple being there. "Do you know the name of that couple?" "No, sir. I have not been able to find out. I've asked Mrs. Payne recently, and she said she does not remember. And the night I was in Mrs. Payne's home, I asked Marina and Mrs. Payne, but they did say a name. Marina would know the name of the couple, but I do not have that information." "And was he the owner of the business?" "The father was the owner of the business, and this was an American couple, and they did not speak Russian, either one. The father was a Russian, or the grandfather, that owned this place of business." "I think you said the grandfather before." "I said either the father or the grandfather. I cannot be sure. It was the girl's father or grandfather and not the boy." So I told my daughter-in-law about this, and she knew about it. So now here is something that I would like to have my daughter-in-law as a witness. It has been stated in the paper that my son was giving Marina black eyes and possibly had beat her. And this is by the Russian people. Now, living in this home in Fort Worth, I had gone by several times, and I had a day off, and Marina was not home. I said to wait a minute. It says Marina was not at home, but then she says, I said to her, Marina, Mama came to see you yesterday. You know home. She didn't answer. I said, Marina, Mama come see you. You know home, Marina. No, I go to lady's house to take English lessons. Do you know of who she was speaking of? I do not know for a fact, but my son Robert will know. And that is why it is important to call him. That is why I'm trying to say, Chief Justice Warren, these others will know this part of my story, give you the facts. I'm assuming it is Mr. Peter Gregory's wife that started these lessons, but Marina was taking English lessons. Now, they lived at a corner house, and there is Carroll Street, and opposite Carroll Street is a parking lot for Montgomery Ward. They live approximately 2 blocks from Montgomery Ward, so I had gone by, as I am stating several times. You have to understand, this is just 6 or 7 weeks that they are in this home. You say they, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Marina and Lee in this home. Then Marina was not home. I could not understand where so fast they could have had so many friends that this Russian girl didn't speak English and know her way about, could be gone all day long. That worried me. So I sat in the car on Montgomery Ward's parking lot where I could see the house because I wanted to see who Marina was going to come home with. The door was open. I went in the house and no one was there. By this time, I was wondering how she could be gone all the time being a stranger in town. I sat in the car all day long. She didn't show up. Finally, I went home, had my supper, left my apartment, and on the way going back to the house, Lee was leaving Montgomery Ward. Now, they did not have a phone. I'm just assuming, this is not a fact, that Lee went to a telephone trying to locate his wife because I was coming from Montgomery Ward. He got in the car with me, and we had about a block to go. I entered the home with Lee, and I said, Lee, where's Marina? Of course, I knew that she wasn't home because I had stayed in the car all day. He said, oh, I guess she's out with some friends. Would you like me to fix your supper? No, she will probably be home in time to fix my supper. So I left. I'm not going to interfere in their married life, but I did offer to fix them some supper. And I went back to make sure Marina still wasn't home. I walked in the home with my son. So approximately 2 days later, not approximately, but 2 days later, I went to the home and my son was reading. He read continuously in the living room and Marina was in the bedroom. I could not see Marina and I said to Lee, tell Marina I am here. Marina made no appearance. So I went into the bedroom and she was nursing June with her head down and I started to talk and she still had her head down. And I came around to the front and I saw Marina with a black eye. Now, gentlemen, I don't think any man should hit his wife as is stated in the paper or beat his wife, but I will say this. There may be times that a woman needs to have a black eye. I'm not condoning the act, but I strongly am saying that this girl was not home and this man was working. And I saw myself that this man came home and didn't have any food. This couple doesn't have a maid or anyone to give this working man food, and I think it was her duty to be home and have his supper ready. That is a little thing maybe, but to me it shows the character of what I'm trying to bring out. And so there may have been reasons that the children fought, and I also know that many, many couples fight, of our finest people, because I made it clear before that I've worked in these very fine homes and have seen very fine people fight. I have seen a gentleman strike his wife in front of me. We know this happens. It's not a nice thing to do, but it happens in our finest homes. I'm not condoning the act, but I'm telling you that there probably was reasons, we will say. The woman has a black eye and he is a louse. He gave her a black eye, but we must consider, why did he give her a black eye? We always must consider the second aspect of the case. Did she take the baby with her when you looked? Yes, sir. She took always the baby with her. Mr. Rankin then asks, did you ask Marina how she got the black eye or anything? Yes, in the bedroom. I was shocked. Mama Lee, just like that. So I went in the living room and I said, Lee, what do you mean by striking Marina? He said, Mother, that's our affair. And so that ended. I wasn't going to interfere any further. Now, this has been publicly stated by the Russian friends that he beat his wife. I don't know if he did beat his wife. I happened to see the black eye. I know that he hit her and gave her a black eye. Marina said so, and my son has said so. But how many times does this happen? I don't know. But I'm trying to point out that I don't approve of it. But I'm trying to point out that everything is not according to Hoyle, as we say in our American way of life. Is there any other time that you recall that you saw she had bruises or a black eye? No, sir. That is the only time. And then the children moved to Dallas. Now, this will end that part of the story. I've accepted, and I have the public papers in 1959 when Lee went to Russia. I made a statement that as an individual, I thought he had a right to make up his own mind and the decision to do what he wanted. I am of that nature because, gentlemen, today or tomorrow I may decide to go to Russia. I will go. We are taught that in America that we have the right to do what we want as an individual. So I publicly stated in 1959 that Lee had a right if he wanted to live in that country. And I think it was courage that he did so instead of staying in America and talking about America and living there and downing his country. It took courage to go and live where he wanted to live. I was criticized highly for making that statement, and it is published in 1959 as far back as that. So I will get back now to when the children left. They did not tell me they had left, so I accepted the fact that my son Lee did not want me to know that he was in Dallas. Why I accepted the fact is because of Lee's so-called defection. I've had it very hard, Mr. Rankin, and gentlemen, I have lost jobs. I was in a position if I was in a home and television was on and something political was on television and the people commented, I felt it was necessary to keep quiet because of it. Because of the defection, I thought if I would express my views, they might think I was a communist like my son and was supposed to be. And in many a home I have been, after 3 or 4 days, they would tell me my services were not needed. I cannot say sure because it was Lee's defection. However, I feel sure that it is because I'm a respected person and a very good nurse. Again, when did you go to nursing school? Seems to be like a big mystery. As has been stated in the paper, my jobs were gotten from word of mouth. But you must understand that I deal with a lot of people, so naturally it is that some of them would feel resentful against me because of my son defecting to Russia and presumably being a communist. Did you ever find out where Marina was that day that you tried to locate her? No, sir, that ended that. So I respected my son's wish, since he didn't want to tell me where he was in Dallas, that I would accept that fact. Now, gentlemen, this may seem hard that I accept these things, but it is not. I am self-supporting. I have a life of my own, and if Lee decides that it is the way he wants it, I'm not going to grieve and worry about it. I have to get my sleep in order to work. I have the ability of accepting things. That ability granted me by the grace of God because of my difficulty in life. I've been a widow. I have had many, many obstacles, and I have had to face them. And my faith gets stronger. I do accept things. As now, I accept the death of my son. I don't brood over that. I have that ability of doing that. So I just accepted the fact when Lee gets ready to let me know where he is, fine. Up until that time, it is his privilege to do what he wants. Now, that is the last contact I've had with Marina and Lee until the news broke in Dallas that Lee was picked up because of the assassination of President Kennedy. Tell us about this period you were talking to when he went to Dallas. Was that before or after the time he went to New Orleans? That was before the time, sir. He lived at my apartment, the Rotary Apartments. When Lee got the job, he lived on Mercedes Street from the end of July, I would say, or the beginning of September until October when he left to go to Dallas. What year was that? That was in 1963. You mean 62. I'm sorry, 1962. And that was the last I had seen of Marina and Lee. Did you ever find where they were in Dallas? No, sir. I explained before that I made no attempt. I thought when they get ready to let me know, that's fine. Up until then, I had to do my own work and take care of myself, and I do respect other people's privileges. If that's the way they want it, fine. When they get ready to let me know, I will welcome them. If not, I will go about my business. Had you learned they'd gone to New Orleans? I had not learned of that until after the assassination. I knew nothing. I had no contact with them. So then the next thing we should start then would be the Dallas, the assassination. Whatever you know. Well, I was on a case in a rest home, and I had a 3 to 11 shift. I was dressed, ready to go to work. I was watching. I am a little ahead of my story. I watched the television in the morning before I was dressed, and Richard Nixon was in Dallas, and he made a television appearance approximately 2 hours before President Kennedy was to arrive in Dallas. And as a layman, I remember saying, well, the audacity of him to make this statement against President Kennedy just an hour or two before his arrival in Dallas. Then I had my lunch and I dressed with my nurse's uniform on to go to work for the 3 to 11 shift, and I have to leave home at 2:30. So I had a time to watch the presidential procession. And while sitting on the sofa, the news came that the president was shot, and there was a witness on television, a man and a little girl on television. However, I could not continue to watch it. I had to report to work. So I went in the car, and approximately 7 blocks away, I turned the radio on in the car. I heard that Harvey Oswald was picked up as a suspect. I immediately turned the car around and came back to the home, got on the telephone, called the Acme Brick in Fort Worth, and asked where Robert was because he'd been traveling, and I must get in touch with Robert immediately because his brother was picked up as a suspect in the assassination. So they had Robert call me. Robert didn't know that Lee was picked up. Let me pause right here. I just caught a contradiction. So Robert testified, I believe we went over this. I don't know. I know I read it in his testimony, but he said that he was at work and it came out over the radio that Lee had been arrested for this. And he said that the receptionist started to cry because she knew that it was his brother. And that's how he found out. That's what Robert said. So here she's saying something totally different. Robert didn't know that Lee was picked up. Was this the day of the assassination? Yes, sir. The day of the assassination, they picked Lee up. And 3 to 11, is that in the afternoon? Yes, this was 2:30 because I was on my way to work and I had to be at work at 3. 3 in the afternoon is when you had to be at work. Yes, sir. And it was 2:30. I heard the news and went back home. I had Acme Brick call Robert to give him the news. And Robert called me and he had not heard his brother was picked up. Now, Robert is in Denton. So I called the Star Telegram and asked that if they could possibly have someone escort me to Dallas because I realized I could not drive to Dallas. And they did. They sent 2 men to escort me to Dallas. The name of one is Bob Schieffer, Schieffer. The other name I will have for you gentlemen. Who are those? Are those reporters? Star Telegram reporters sent by the Star Telegram editor to escort me to Dallas. Now, upon arriving in Dallas, I did not ask. I did not want to talk to the police. I specifically asked to talk to FBI agents. My wish was granted. I was sent into a room. I have to backtrack my story. The police do not know I am here. I want to talk to the FBI agents. Rankin then asks, what time of day is this? This is approximately 3:30, so I'm escorted into an office and 2 brown FBI agents. They are brothers. I understand that there was another man who I do not know the name of. By that, do you mean that their names were Brown? Their names were Brown, and I have the correct names also, but we were also in this room, and I told them who I was, and I said, I want to talk with you gentlemen because I feel like my son is an agent of the government, and for the security of my country, I don't want this to get out. But first I said to them, I want to talk to FBI agents from Washington. Mrs. Oswald, we are from Washington. We work with Washington. I said, I understand you work with Washington, but I want officials from Washington. And I believed they would be in town because of protecting the president. I said, I do not want local FBI men. What I have to say, I want to say to Washington men. Of course, they wanted the news. They said, well, we work through Washington. I said, I know you do, but I would like Washington men. So I had no choice. Did you tell them why you thought he was an agent? Yes, sir, I'm coming to this. So I said, I have information that, I told him who I was. I said, for the security of my country, I want this kept perfectly quiet until you investigate. I happen to know that the State Department furnished the money for my son to return back from the United States, and I don't know if that would be made public or what public would involve, so please, will you investigate this and keep it quiet? Of course, that was news to them. They left me sitting in the office, and I also told them that Congressman Jim Wright knew about this. You can be sure we will question Jim Wright. And I gave them the names of 4 men I had talked with while in Washington. Would you like those 4 names now? Yes. One is Mr. Boster, B-O-S-T-E-R, who was special counsel in charge of Soviet affairs. One was Mr. Stanfield. I should know the names. Well, gentlemen, Mr. Doyle will see that I give you the names of these men. I had it on a little card and carried it with me all these years from my Washington trip and gave it to the FBI men to investigate. So they left me. When you say you understand that the State Department paid your son's way back from the Soviet Union. Yes, sir. Did you ever learn that that was a loan? I have the document to state that they loaned Lee the money to come back. But you didn't know that at the time. Yes, sir. But I stated, you see, I was worried about the security of my country. I didn't know if the public would find out, how they would take the news that the State Department loaned him the money, since now he's a Marxist and an accused assassin. I was worried about my country, and I didn't want the public to know. I wanted the FBI, not the police, to know. Did you know anything else that you told them about why you thought he was an agent? No, I didn't tell them anything, but they questioned me, started to question me. One of them said, you know a lot about your son. When was the last time you were in touch with him? That wasn't the Browns. That was the other man. I said, I've not seen my son in a year. He said sarcastically, now, Mrs. Oswald, are we to believe that you have not been in touch with your son for a year? You are a mother. I said, believe what you want, but I've not been in touch with my son in a year. My son did not want me involved. He has kept me out of his activities. That is the truth, God's truth, that I have not seen my son in a year. And the gentleman left, and I did not see them after that. They sent the stenographer that was in the outer office to sit with me, and she started to question me. I said, young lady, I'm not going to be questioned. You may just as well make up your mind that I'm just going to sit here. What I want, if you will, relay, to have these 2-star telegram men come in here, please. I would like to ask them something. So they came in, and I said, Bob, I have rights, and I want to see Lee. Of course, the men didn't answer. But I sat in the office approximately 2 or 3 hours alone, gentlemen, with this woman who came in and out. I said, if you think you're going to question me or get information from me, you're not. And I sat in the office for 2 or 3 hours. Every now and then, I would walk up to the outer corridor and say to whoever was there, now listen, I'm getting tired of this. I want to see Lee. What office was this? The courthouse in Dallas. Whose office was it in? Do you know? No, I don't know. It was a private office that led, for instance, it would be like in the corner glass enclosed office, and then you could see the outer corridor where the stenographers and the police and everybody was. You don't know whose office it was? No, sir, I don't. I sat there approximately 3 hours, and I never did get to see Lee. So at 5:30, then Robert came in, and he was questioned by the FBI. Mr. Rankin then asked, were you there when he was questioned? No, sir. And I will state now emphatically that I have never been questioned by the FBI or Secret Service. Never, gentlemen. If they can produce my voice or anything, they can produce it. So then I was escorted into the office where Marina and Mrs. Payne was. And of course, I started crying right away and hugged Marina. And Marina gave me Rachel, whom I had never seen. I did not know I had a second grandchild until this very moment, so I started to cry. Marina started to cry, and Mrs. Payne said, oh, Mrs. Oswald, I am so glad to meet you. Marina has often expressed the desire to contact you, especially when the baby was being born, but Lee didn't want her to. I said, Mrs. Payne, you spoke English. Why didn't you contact me? She said Marina didn't know how to get in touch with me. She said, well, because of the way they lived, he lived in Dallas and came home on weekends, I didn't feel like I wanted to interfere. As she acted as, excuse me, gentlemen, but this is very emotional. That's all right. She acted as an interpreter for Marina. We're in the courthouse now, in the jailhouse. So her testimony, gentlemen, the testimony that the Dallas police have is the testimony of Mrs. Payne that Marina assumed Lee had given her. Could we state now maybe it is not the correct testimony that Marina gave just one interpreter and Marina's friend? Is that the testimony that the Dallas police has? I have no way of knowing, and you have no way of knowing, gentlemen, whether it is the correct testimony. So Mrs. Payne told me that she acted as an interpreter. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I want to stay in Dallas and be near Lee so that I can help with the situation as much as possible. She said, Mrs. Oswald, you are welcome in my home if you care to sleep on the sofa. I said, thank you very much, Mrs. Payne. I will accept your offer. I will sleep on the floor in order to be near Dallas. So we left. We went to the Payne's home. The Payne's home is in Fort Worth. So I don't know what the fuck she's talking about. I'm going to say again, I did not see my son. So I have my nurse's uniform on for 3 days. What day was this at the Paynes? This was the night of November the 22nd. We arrived there approximately 6 o'clock. Upon entering the home, about 5 minutes after I was in the home, there was a knock at the door. Now, this is a little vague. On the way leaving the courthouse, we may have been in the company of the 2 life representatives. They may have taken us to Mrs. Payne's home. I did not ask who was taking us to Mrs. Payne's home because I was holding my grandbaby and talking to Marina and sitting in the back of the car. And it didn't interest me at the time how I was getting to Mrs. Payne's home. Why I'm bringing this up is because after I was in her home about 5 minutes, there was a knock at the door and these 2 life representatives entered the home. The name of the men, one is Alan Grant and the other is Tommy Thompson. And I was not introduced. Have you ever seen them before? No, I had never seen them before. And as I say, they could have been the men driving the car. But I want you to understand at the time, I didn't notice that because I was holding my new grandbaby and comforting my daughter-in-law and talking to Mrs. Payne in the back seat of the car. So Mrs. Payne sat on the floor and she said to the photographer, he had a camera in front of him, now I hope you have a good color film because I want good pictures. What time of day was this? This was approximately 6:30. We had just arrived in Mrs. Payne's home, I would say 6 or 7 o'clock approximately. Between that time, we're home 5 minutes when they get knocked on the door. Mrs. Payne immediately says, gentlemen, I hope you have colored film so we will have some good pictures. I didn't know who they were, but then I knew they were newsmen because of her statement and the camera. So Tommy Thompson started to interview Mrs. Payne. He said, Mrs. Payne, tell me, are Marina and Lee separated since Lee lives in Dallas? No, they're a happy family. Lee lives in Dallas because of necessity. He works in Dallas, and this is Irving. And he has no transportation, and he comes in every weekend to see his family. Well, he said, what type of family man is he? A normal family man. He plays with his children. Last night he fed June. He watches television and just normal things, she went on. So he said, Mrs. Payne, can you tell me how Lee got the money to... can you tell me how Lee was able to return back to the United States financially? Oh, yes, he saved money to come back to the United States, she said. Now, while this little episode went on, I was fuming, gentlemen, because I didn't want this type of publicity. I thought it was uncalled for immediately after the assassination and the consequent arrest of my son. But I was in Mrs. Payne's home. Now I had an opportunity to be gracious. I spoke up and I said, I am ahead of myself. She answered that he saved the money. I spoke up and I said, now, Mrs. Payne, I'm sorry. I'm in your home, and I appreciate the fact that I'm a guest in your home, but I will not have you making statements that are incorrect, because I happen to know you have made an incorrect statement. To begin with, I do not approve of this publicity, and if we're going to have the Life Story, the Story with Life magazine, by that time I knew what it was. I would like to get paid. Here's my daughter-in-law with 2 small children, and I myself am penniless, and if we're going to give this information, I really believe we should get paid for it. Do you think Mrs. Payne was trying to get paid for it? Possibly, but I do not know this. It was prearranged. That is the point that is important. That after a few hours' time, the Life representatives were invited to her home, into her house, because she expected them, you see. You think she arranged it then? Yes, sir, possibly with Marina's help. I do not know. It was arranged, I'm positive. The way they entered the home, she invited them in without even introducing me, and immediately she hoped that they had color film. Were they talking to each other, Marina and Mrs. Payne, while you were there? Yes, they talked in Russian. And that is a difficult part. I didn't know Russian. Then with that, the Life representative got up and said, Mrs. Oswald, I will call my office and see what they think about an arrangement of your life story. So he did call the office. He closed the door and called in private and said nothing was said in the living room. When I say nothing was said, it was between myself and the other representative. Mrs. Payne was talking to my daughter-in-law in Russian. I was talking to my daughter-in-law in English. It was a regular general conversation as far as I knew. He came out from the telephone conversation and said no, that the company would not allow him to pay for the story. What they would do is pay for our expenses while in Dallas and our food and expenses, hotel accommodations. So I told him that I would think about that. Now they continued to hang around, and they were taking pictures continuously all the while this was going on. The photographer, Mr. Allen, was continuously taking pictures. I was awfully tired and upset. I rolled my stockings down, and the picture is in Life magazine. And he stopped that. So I got up and said, I'm not having this invasion of privacy. I realize that I am in Mrs. Payne's home, but you are taking my picture without my consent, and a picture that I certainly don't want made public. It is the worst with me rolling my hose. I wanted to get comfortable. He followed Marina around in the bedroom. She was undressing June. He took pictures of everything. And Mrs. Payne was in her glory, I will say this. Mrs. Payne was very happy all these pictures were taken, and I had to go behind Marina to see that the photographers were not taking her, and they were taking me. And it was just a regular, the home was a living room and a hall and a bedroom and a kitchen, and we were all going around in circles. And the photographer was taking pictures until finally I became indignant and said, I've had it. Now find out what accommodations you can make for us, for my daughter-in-law and I, so we can be in Dallas to help Lee, and let me know in the morning. So they left. However, about an hour later, there was a telephone call to Mrs. Payne from a Life representative. I know by her conversation who she was talking to. Who was that? One of the men, either Alan Grant or Tommy Thompson. And after the conversation, I said to her, was that one of the Life representatives? And she said, oh, yes, he was just a little upset about what happened. So I got no information there. The chairman, I guess that's, who is that, Dulles? Would you like to take a short recess, Mrs. Oswald? Yes, I'm getting thirsty. Suppose we do. We will take one for about 10 minutes and then have a brief recess. The commission will be in order. Mrs. Oswald, you may continue with your statement. Yes, sir. Now we are in the Payne's home. We are in the Payne's home yet. Yes, this is on the day of the assassination. Yes, sir. The 22nd, Friday. I'm worried because Lee hasn't had an attorney, and I'm talking about that. And Mrs. Payne said, oh, don't worry about that. I'm a member of the Civil Liberties Union, and Lee will have an attorney, I can assure you. I said to myself, when? Of course, I didn't want to push her, argue with her, but the point was, if she was a member of the union, why didn't she see Lee had an attorney then? So I wasn't too happy about that. Now, gentlemen, this is some very important facts. My daughter-in-law spoke to Mrs. Payne in Russian. Mama, she says. So she takes me into the bedroom and closes the door. She says, Mama, I show you. She opened a closet. In the closet was a lot of books and papers, and she came out with a picture of Lee with a gun. It said, to my daughter June, written in English. I said, oh, Marina, police. I didn't think anything of the picture. Now you must understand that I don't know what is going on television. I came from the jailhouse and everything, so I don't know all the circumstances, what evidence they had against my son by this time. I had no way of knowing, but I say to my daughter June, anybody can own a rifle to go hunting. You yourself probably have a rifle, so I'm not connecting this with the assassination. To my daughter June, because I would immediately say, and I remember, I think my son is an agent all the time. No one is going to be foolish enough if they mean to assassinate the president or even murder someone to take a picture of themselves with that rifle and leave that there for evidence. So I didn't think a thing about it. And it says, to my daughter June, I said, the police, meaning that if the police got that, they would use that against my son, which would be a natural way to think. She says, you take, Mama. I said, no. Yes, Mama, you take. I said, no, Marina, put that in the book. So she put the picture back in the book. Which book it was, I do not know. So the next day when we were at the courthouse, this is on Saturday, we were sitting down waiting to see Lee. She puts her shoe down. She says, Mom, a picture. She had the picture folded up in her shoe. Now, I did not see that it was the picture, but I know that it was because she told me it was, and I could see it was folded up. It wasn't open for me to see. I said, Marina, just like that. So Robert came along and I says, Robert. No, Marina. I didn't want her to tell Robert about the picture. Right there, that was about the picture. Did you ever tell her to destroy the picture? No. Now that I've got to go into this, I want to tell you about destroying the picture. Now, that was in Mrs. Payne's home. I want to start to remember because when we leave Mrs. Payne's home, we go into another phase where the picture comes in again. So I have to tell thee, unless you want me to ask me specific questions. No, go right ahead. Mrs. Payne in front of me gave Marina $10. Now, Mrs. Payne, when I said after what I said after the representative left, I said, I do want to get paid for the story because I'm destitute, and here's a girl with her husband is going to be in jail. We will need the money for attorneys with 2 babies. She said, you don't have to worry about Marina. Marina will always have a home with me because Marina helps. Now, Mrs. Payne speaks Russian fluently. She helps me with my Russian language. She babysits for me and helps me with the housework, and you never have to worry about Marina. She will always have a home with me. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Payne are separated. Mr. Payne does not live here, so it is just the 2 women. So Mrs. Payne didn't graciously do anything for Marina, as the paper stated. That Lee never did pay Mrs. Payne for room or board. Mrs. Payne owes them money. That is almost the kind of work that I do, or the airline stewardesses do, serve food and everything. Marina was earning her keep and really should have had a salary for it. What I'm trying to say, gentlemen, Mrs. Payne had Marina there to help babysit with the children and with her children, and if she wanted to go running around and everything. So actually, she wasn't doing my son or Marina the favor that she claimed she was doing. But the point I'm trying to stress is that she sure did tell me Marina would never have to worry because Marina would have a home with her. At this particular moment, I cannot remember anything of importance in the house, otherwise about the picture I have stated, and Mrs. Payne with the life representative, and her saying that Lee would have an attorney, and Mrs. Payne gave Marina a $10 bill. Oh, Marina told me, Mama, I have this money. It was money in an envelope in the bedroom, and when she showed me the picture, I said, how much money, Marina? About how much, I asked her. About $100 and some. Now, Mrs. Payne has stated to the life representatives that Lee and Marina were saving his pay in order to have a home for themselves for Christmas time because they had never been in a home of their own at Christmas time in order to celebrate Christmas. So the $100 and some odd isn't a big sum, considering that Lee paid $8 a week room in Dallas. And it has been stated by the landlady that Lee ate lunch meat or fruit, and Lee was very, very thin when I saw him. And Lee gave his salary to his wife in order to have this home for Christmas. So that it is not a lot of money to have in the house. I would think not so, because I believe Lee was earning about $50 a week. And let's say he could live for about $10 or $12, and he gave the rest of the money to his wife. And so I reported the money to the Secret Service while we were in Six Flags that Marina had the money. I wanted them to know. She showed me the money. I cannot think now. I did think of the money after going back, but I cannot think of anything at this particular moment that would be of any benefit that happened in the house. In regard to the photograph, I will show you some photographs. Oh, this is Mr. Rankin talking now, sorry. In regard to the photograph, I will show you some photographs. Maybe you can tell me whether these are the ones you're referring to. Here are Commission's Exhibit 134. No, sir, that is not the picture. And 133 consists of two different pictures. No, sir, that is not the picture. He was holding the rifle up, and it said, to my daughter June with love. He was holding the rifle up. By holding it up, you mean like this, crosswise with both hands on the rifle. With both hands on the rifle above his head? That is right. Did you ever see these pictures, exhibits 133 and 134? No, sir, I've never seen those pictures. Now, you were going to tell us about some further discussion of the pictures you did see. Yes, all right. Now, so the next morning, two of the representatives of Life magazine, Mr. Alan Grant and Mr. Tommy Thompson, come by at 9 o'clock with a woman, Russian interpreter, a doctor somebody. I've not been able to find this woman. I've called the universities thinking that she was a language teacher, and maybe you have her name, but she's very, very important to our story. And I don't want to locate her if possible. And I do want to locate her if possible. During the night, I had decided I was going to take up their offer because I would be besieged by reporters and everything. So why not go with the Life representatives and let them pay my room and board and my daughter-in-law's? They came by at 9 o'clock without calling. With this Russian interpreter. So Marina was getting dressed and getting the children dressed, and he was taking pictures all the time. They came by where? Mrs. Payne's home. And there was no hurry, though, to leave the home because Mrs. Payne was most anxious for the Life representatives to talk to her and get these pictures and everything. Whether Marina has any part in this, I don't know, because they spoke Russian and she didn't tell me about it. But I know Mrs. Payne did. We left with the two Life representatives. They brought us to the Hotel Adolphus in Dallas. I immediately, upon entering the hotel, picked up the telephone and called Captain Will Fritz to see if Marina and I could see Lee at the jailhouse. Who is he? He's one of the big men in Dallas on this case. The chief of detectives or something like that. Yes, and I called him from the hotel, and the man that answered the phone said he would relay my message to him, that I wanted to see if Marina and I could see Lee. I waited on the phone. He came back and said, yes, Mrs. Oswald, Captain Fritz said you may see Lee at 12 o'clock today. We arrived at the Adolphus Hotel between 9:30 and 10. What day was this? This was Saturday, November 23rd, the morning of Saturday, November 23rd. While we were there, an FBI agent, Mr. Hart Odom, this should be Mr. Bardwell Odom, but whatever, entered the room with another agent and wanted Marina to accompany him to be questioned. Were those FBI agents? Yes, sir. Mr. Hart Odom is an FBI agent. And I said, no, we're going to see Lee. We were all eating breakfast when he came in. I said, no, we have been promised to see Lee. She's not going with you. So he said, well, we'll tell you, Mrs. Oswald, please, to the interpreter. I would like to question her, and I would like her to come with me to be questioned. I said, it is no good. You don't need to tell the interpreter that because my daughter-in-law is not going with you. We have been promised to see Lee, and besides, Marina has testified, made her statement at the courthouse yesterday, and any further statement that Marina will make will be through counsel. Mr. Odom said to the interpreter, Mrs. Oswald, to the interpreter, will you tell Mrs. Oswald to decide what she would like to do and not to listen to her mother-in-law? I said, it is no good to tell my daughter-in-law, because my daughter-in-law is not leaving here with you, Mr. Odom, without counsel. And I said, and I have been telling Marina, no. She said, I do, Mama, she kept saying. Just then my son, Robert, entered the room, and Mr. Odom said, Robert, we would like to take Marina and question her. He said, no, I'm sorry, we're going to try to get lawyers for both she and Lee. So we left. We went to the courthouse, and we sat a while at the courthouse, and my son Robert was being interviewed by, I don't know whether it was Secret Service or FBI, in a glass enclosure. We were sitting in a glass enclosed office. We were sitting on the bench right there. Where was this? In the Dallas courthouse on Saturday. So we waited a while. One of the men came by and said, I'm sorry that we're going to be delayed in letting you see Lee, but we have picked up another suspect. I said to Marina, oh, Marina, good. Another man they think may maybe shoot Kennedy. Did you ask anything about who this suspect was? No, sir, I did not. He just gave the information why we would be delayed. We sat out there quite a while. The police were very nice. They helped us about the baby. We went into another room for privacy, for Marina to nurse Rachel. It was 2 or 3 hours before we got to see Lee. We went upstairs and were allowed to see Lee. This was in the jail, the same place I had been from the very beginning, and we were taken upstairs. And by the way, they only issued a pass for Marina and myself, not for Robert. And Robert was very put out because he thought he was going to get to see his brother. Whether Robert saw his brother or not, I do not know, Mr. Rankin. And what time of day was this? Just a minute now. We arrived there at 12 o'clock. This would be about 4:30 in the afternoon before we got to see Lee. Was anyone else present when he saw you? No, Marina and I were escorted to the back door where they had an enclosure and telephone. So Marina got on the telephone and talked to Lee in Russian. That is my handicap. I don't know what was said. And Lee seemed very severely composed and assured. He was well beaten up. He had a black eye and his face was all bruised and everything. But he was very calm. He smiled with his wife and talked with her. And then I got on the phone and I said, honey, you are so bruised up your face. What are they doing? He said, Mother, don't worry. I got in a scuffle. Now, my son would not tell me that they had abused him. That was a boy's way to his mother. If he was abused and it was shown in the paper as black eyes, he wouldn't tell how he got that. He said that it was done in the scuffle. So I talked and said, is there anything I can do to help you? He said, no, Mother, everything is fine. I know my rights and I will have an attorney. I have already requested to get in touch with an attorney. Abt, I think his name is. Don't worry about a thing. Did you say anything to him about another suspect? No, sir, I did not. That was my entire conversation to him. Gentlemen, you must realize this. I heard over the television my son say, I did not do it. I did not do it. And a million other people heard him. I say this as a mother. I heard my son say this, but also as a citizen. If I had heard another man say I didn't do it, I will have to believe that man because he hasn't had the opportunity to present his side of the case. So here's my son. When I saw him, people had said, did you ask him if he did it? No, sir. I think by now you know my temperament, gentlemen. I would not insult my son and ask him if he shot President Kennedy. Why? Because I myself heard him say, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. So that was enough for me. I would not ask that question. Who told you that they had found another suspect? One of the officers, that, sir. I don't know. He just walked in real fast and said they were sitting down and they had picked up another suspect. And it was in the paper that they had picked up another suspect at that particular time, which would have been approximately 1 o'clock that day. But you don't remember the officer's name? No, sir. That is all he said and he left. Remember, about 20-something people were arrested out of Dealey Plaza. The 2 sets of tramps, Emilio Santana, a whole bunch of other people, right? If I'm not mistaken, the group of Jack Todd, Angelo Thomas Caston, which I really need to refresh myself on. If you guys want to go out and check out some interesting stuff on your own, check out the statements of Angelo Thomas Caston and Jack Todd. There's 1 or 2 more guys who were in this little clique that were all connected to the local, what the fuck was it called? There was a local gang in Dallas that had been kind of defunct, and these guys were the remnants of it. But they were connected to Jack Ruby and a whole bunch of other guys. And this was some of the very first stuff I started researching back in fucking 2018 or whenever I started this shit, 2017. I don't even remember what year I started. It's been 7 years at this point. So yeah, July 2018. So it was right about that time when I got into this really obscure stuff with Jack Todd and Angelo Thomas Caston. But I'm gonna have to dig that stuff up and we'll go over it on the show because my memory tells me that these guys were up in Dealey Plaza somewhere and had been stopped and then questioned by the FBI and a whole bunch of stuff. So they were some of the guys, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm remembering correctly, that were picked up that day. But I may be mistaken because it's been so goddamn long. But yeah, that's some really fascinating stuff there too. One of the guys, I think it was Angelo Thomas Caston, right? He gets talked to by the FBI, goes to his house, and he's one of these independent oil guys, right? Like Braden and whatnot. So, but he gets talked to by the FBI, and then he gets picked up by Dallas police. And when he goes and talks to Dallas police, he's like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I never talked to the FBI. And that caught me as one of these weird, obfuscations that we come across all the time, which tells me whenever there's obfuscation, there's something there, right? When there's smoke, there's fire. All right, let me see where we're at. About how long did you and Marina spend with your son? I would say we spent about 3 or 4 minutes on the telephone, and then Marina came back to the telephone and talked with Lee, so we left. So Marina started crying. Marina says, Mama, I tell Lee I love Lee, and Lee says he loved me very much, and Lee tell me to make sure I buy shoes for June. Now, here's a man that is accused of murdering the president. This is the next day, or so let's say about 24 hours that he had been questioned. His composure is good, and he is thinking about his young daughter needing shoes. Now, June was wearing shoes belonging to Mrs. Payne's little girl, Marina told me, that they were little red tennis shoes, and that the top was worn. They were clean, and the canvas was shown by the toe part, like children wear out their toes. I ask you this, gentlemen, if Marina had $100 and some odd in the house, why is it necessary that my son has to tell her at the jailhouse, remind her to buy shoes for this baby for the child? Just a few dollars out of that $100 and some odd would have bought the shoes for this particular child. Another way to look at this, as I stated previously, that the boy is concerned about shoes for his baby, and he is in this awful predicament, so he must feel innocent for sure that everything is going on, that everything's going to be all right, as he told me. Now, in this telephone conversation, when you talk to your son, can you explain a little bit to the commission how that is. Was your son on the other side of a wall or something? Yes, sir. My son was on the other side of the wall, and then the back of the wall was a door with a peephole where there was an officer. Now, we're going to come from this door with the peephole and the officer to my son, then a glass partition, and then glass partitions like telephone booths, but not really enclosed, just a little separation. So you could not reach in there and take your son's hand. No, sir. We talked by the telephone. And he had a telephone on his side, and he had a telephone. And you talked back and forth. Back and forth, that is right. That is the way we talked, and the boy was badly beat up. I have proof in the papers, his face, black eyes, all scratched up, his neck was scratched. He was badly beat up, but he assured me that he was not mistreating him, that he got some of the bruises in the scuffle. As I say, the boy, if he was being mistreated, would not tell his mother that. And whatever Marina said to him was in Russian, and you didn't understand it. No, sir, I did not understand it. But I would say this, it seemed to be just an ordinary, pleasant conversation. He was smiling, and she told me that he told me that he loved her very much, and she said that she loved him and told about buying shoes for the baby, and that's all she said. She did not tell any other part of the conversation, and they talked quite a while. She talked with him twice. She talked with him the first time I got on the phone, then she talked to him again. Did it sound like there was any dispute or argument? No, it was a pleasant conversation, but she did not volunteer to tell me what was said, and I did not ask her what was said. What did you do after that? So then after that, we went back to the Adolphus Hotel, and upon arrival at the hotel, a little ahead of myself in the story, the police and the detectives at the Dallas jail were most courteous to Marina and I. There were hundreds of reporters out in the corridor, and we were getting ready to leave, so they said that they would take us down the back way. Incidentally, the same place where my son was shot, and they had arranged for two to go down to get a car and bring it into the basement and take us down the back elevator and try to avoid the reporters. And there were approximately 6 or 7 in the elevator. When we got down there, there were just a few reporters, and they went out of their way to elude any reporters. We were at the Adolphus Hotel, and I explained to you. And instead of coming from the jail, going straight to the Adolphus, they drove around for 20 or 25 minutes, sometimes in circles, in order to lose anybody who might be following Marina and I. So we got to the floor of the Adolphus Hotel. We knocked on the door where we were, and no one answered. We were with 2 men. Immediately around the corner comes Mr. Tommy Thompson, the life representative. What 2 men were with you? 2 men from the Dallas courthouse. From the police? Yes, from the police. So Mr. Tommy Thompson came, and they asked for his credentials, and I had never even, as thorough as I'm trying to be, I am trying to tell you that there are some things that I don't even know because of the confusion. I didn't ask for credentials. I could have been with anybody. I just assumed they were Life representatives. I had not asked. You guys got to remember, Life magazine is run by the fucking CIA, particularly in 63 when it's run by C.D. Jackson, right? Of Buchenwald fame faking all the Holocaust shit. So just keep that in mind anytime you hear about Time or Life magazine. I just assumed they were Life representatives. I had not asked, but these Dallas detectives or police in plain clothes asked Mr. Tommy Thompson for his credentials, and then they left us in his care again. Immediately, Mr. Tommy Thompson said, "Mrs. Oswald, what do you plan to do now?" The interpreter was gone, and so was the other representative, Mr. Alan Grant. I said, well, the arrangement was that we were going to stay here in the hotel for a few days, and you were going to pay the expenses. He said, but you have not given us any facts. They were not interested, and to me it seems very strange that they were not interested in my conversation at the jail with my son. They did not even ask if we saw Lee. Yet they knew we left the Adolphus Hotel in order to go see Lee, but they did not even ask if we saw Lee. And I have often wondered about that. So when I told him that we expected to stay there, he said, well, Mrs. Oswald, the reporters will be coming in flocks. They know you are here. Just a minute. He got on the telephone. Mr. Alan Grant, they had the Life representative had a room on the 9th floor where they had a lot of men working on the case. And we were on the 11th, I believe. So Mr. Alan Grant came down from the 9th floor with another man. I do not know his name because the baby's diapers had to be changed and this sort of thing. He said, Mrs. Oswald, they left. Tommy Thompson said, Mrs. Oswald, what we're going to do is to get you on the outskirts of town so the reporters don't know where you are. And here's some money for your expenses in case you need anything. Well, I took the bill and put it in my uniform pocket without looking at it. That may sound strange to you, gentlemen, but this is confusion. I knew it was money, and I just put it in my uniform pocket. So Mr. Alan Grant escorted my daughter-in-law and I out of the hotel, the Adolphus Hotel, and took us to the Executive Inn, which is on the outskirts of Dallas. We sat in the car. He went in and came out. Wait a minute. The Executive Inn? Hang on, let me scratch my head for a second. I might be wrong, but I think the Executive Inn was where Lawrence Howard was staying when he met with Thomas Beckham, if you guys remember that. That's kind of weird, right? I'm going to have to double check on that, because if that is the case, of all the hotels to pick, why the fuck would they pick that one? Yeah, don't quote me on that yet. Give me till tomorrow and I'll double check. We sat in the car, we went in and came out and then said, Mrs. Oswald, I've arranged for you all to stay here for 2 or 3 days. I have to be back in San Francisco. Anything you want to have, your cash that Mr. Tommy Thompson gave you, and he will be back in touch with you. Well, I didn't think too much of it. He escorted us with a porter up to our room. We had 2 beautiful suites, 2, not 1, completed rooms and baths adjoining at the Executive Inn. And that was the last time I had seen either representative. I was stranded with a Russian girl and 2 babies. I didn't realize in the beginning, but then it was time for food and I had to order food. I told Marina to stay aside and that I would let the man in. She stayed in her room. I let this man in with the food, and then I became uneasy. That he might know who we were is what I was uneasy about, because I didn't realize the danger actually Marina and I were in. I sensed we were alone, and there I was with a Russian girl, and I didn't want anyone to know who we were because I knew my son had been picked up. So this is where the picture comes in. While there, there's an ashtray on the dressing table, and Marina comes in with bits of paper and puts them in the ashtray and strikes a match to it. And this is the picture of the gun that Marina tore up into bits and struck a match to. Now, that didn't burn completely because it was heavy, not cardboard. What is the name for it? A photographic picture. So the match didn't take it completely. Had you said anything to her about it before burning that? No, sir. That's the last time I seen the picture was in Marina's shoe when she was trying to tell me that the picture was in her shoe. I state here now that Marina meant for me to have that picture from the very beginning in Mrs. Payne's home. She said, I testified before, Mama, you keep picture. And then she showed it to me in the courthouse, and when I refused it, then she decided to get rid of the picture. She tore up the picture and struck a match to it, and then I took it and flushed it down the toilet. And what time was this? This now, just a minute, gentlemen, because this I know is very important to me and to you too. We'd been in jail. This was in the evening. Well, this then would be approximately 5:30 or 6 in the evening. What day? On Saturday, November 23rd. Now, I flushed the torn bits and the half-burnt thing down the commode, and nothing was said. There was nothing said. And that was at the Executive Inn. At the Executive Inn. Now, Mr. Odom, the same FBI agent that insisted upon my daughter-in-law going with him from the Adolphus, knocked on the door at the Executive Inn. I had my robe and slippers on, and I pushed the curtain aside when he knocked. He said, "This is Mr. Odom." So I opened the door. "This is very important. I would like to not talk about it. I would like to show you what I did. This is so important." I opened the door just a little because I had the robe off, and I didn't want anybody to come in. The door is just ajar. I'm going to take off my shoes, gentlemen, because I have this worked out. This is my height, he said. "Mrs. Oswald, we would like to see Marina." I said, "Mr. Odom, I stated to you yesterday, you are not going to see Marina. We are awful tired." "Well, we just want to ask her one question." "Mr. Odom, I'm not calling my daughter. As a matter of fact, she's taking a bath." "She wasn't." He said, "Mrs. Oswald, I would like to ask you a question." "Yes, sir." "The door is ajar. That is my height. I wear bifocals, which enlarges things. And in his hand bigger than mine, in the cup of his hand, like this, is a picture. And the 2 corners are torn off the picture. This is a very glossy black and white picture of a man's face and shoulder. Now, Mr. Odom wasn't too tall. I need somebody else. Mr. Odom's hand with the picture, what I'm trying to say, he's facing this way, showing me. So my eyes are looking straight at the picture. And I have nothing else to see but this hand in the picture because the door is ajar. And there is nothing on the picture but a face and shoulders. There's no background or anything. So I can identify the picture amongst millions of pictures. I am so sure of it. It was a glossy black and white picture. So I said, "No, sir, believe me, I have never seen this picture in my life." With that, he went off. There was another man with him. About an hour later, the telephone rang, and it was Mrs. Payne. She said, "Mrs. Oswald, Lee called, and he was very upset that Marina was not with me, and he asked me to get a lawyer for him. Mr. Apt, I would like to talk to Marina." So I put Marina on the telephone, and Marina said about 2 or 3 words. So when she got off the telephone, I said, "Now Marina talks in Russian, gentlemen." I said, "Marina, Mrs. Payne told me that Lee called you, and you were not at home at Mrs. Payne's, and Lee tells Mrs. Payne to get a lawyer." Marina didn't answer. And then I sensed, well, now, why isn't she answering me? This is very peculiar. And there was no more said about that conversation. So, all right. So I'm going to call it for today right here. I got some things I need to double check, especially particularly on the executive end. And so, yeah, so this is interesting, right? So Marina allegedly has a picture of Oswald with a gun over his head. She tears it up and burns it and flushes it down the toilet. And then allegedly the pictures we see are taken from supposedly I don't know, the negatives, but I thought one of them on the back said like Hunter a fascist or something like that, right? So this is all CIA nonsense, but we'll get to the bottom of it. That's going to do it for me today, guys, and I'll be back tomorrow. Thank you.